What's up guys, Asian here again with another build video, and today we're going to be going over the Stamina Nightblade, a double bow build. So the double bow build got a pretty nice buff overall in the Wrathstone update, and that's mainly from the introduction of a new medium armor set in one of the dungeons, Tzogvin's Warband. So with the introduction of that new set, along with the buff to the shadow, as well as a few changes to the way that the spider synergy works for trapping webs, bow builds actually have gotten a really strong bonus buff, I should say, in the Wrathstone patch. I'm sure you guys have seen a couple of videos from mostly Nos. I'm sure there are other videos out there by other content creators, but Nos is the one that comes to mind that is showing, you know, the bow build. Granted, he's using a warden, but bow builds are pulling very high numbers with good RNG with the shadow silk synergy there. So really strong potential replacement here for Magicka DPS if you want to play a ranged spec, but you don't necessarily want to play a Magicka DPS. So double bow builds, whether that's on a warden or a Nightblade, are both very good options here. So we're primarily focusing here on Wardens and Nightblades for bow builds because they have the best sort of class skill set to kind of complement that sort of bow build. You can play bow builds with other classes, but the Nightblade and the Warden have the class abilities to really complement that sort of build that you want to go around, the ranged double bow build. So, just like the rest of our build videos, we'll be going over gear, skills, attributes, everything you need to know to recreate this build yourself. We will be going over a few gear substitutions that you might want to consider making if you don't have access to certain sets in the game. And then finally, we'll be talking about our rotation, because our rotation is going to be a little bit different. Very different, I should say, from a dual wield bow build. So we will be talking a little bit about a rotation, how we're going to go around it. And then finally we'll do a 6-month dummy parse so you guys can get an idea of the amount of DPS that this build is able to pull. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started here with our gear. So in terms of Monster Helm sets, I am using a full Monster Helm set. Now Nas personally recommends running 2 one-piece sets, and I'll go over the pros and cons of each here, but there's basically 2 full Monster Helm sets that you can really use on a double bow build, because a lot of the stamina Monster Helm sets don't really lend themselves very well to a ranged setup. Velidreth is one of those 2 sets. So the disease spores that can shoot out for about 20 to 22 meters. I haven't really measured it out exactly, which is pretty much like the farthest that you want to be with this particular build. So 20 meters is the range of Velidreths. Now, unlike when you are right up against the boss as a dual wield bow build, a Velidreth spore, you will only ever be able to get one of them to ever hit the boss, just because you're so far away. By the time that the spore hits the boss, they have branched out far enough that you will not be able to get a second or third spore to hit the boss, unless, of course, you're playing all the way up in melee range, at which point you might as well just run a dual wield bow build rather than double bow build. But Velidreth is one of the few Monster Helm sets that are able to hit your boss or enemies at range. The other Monster Helm set that can hit enemies at range that is suited for Stamina DPS is going to be, if I can find it, I don't think I have it here, it's going to be, where is it? Stormfist. So Stormfist is another stamina-oriented Monster Helm set that will hit things at range. So the one piece is stamina regen, so that's obviously weaker than the Velidreth, which is weapon damage. But Velidreth is a DLC Monster Helm, so you do need to have access to Shadows of the Hist in order to complete Cradle of Shadows, versus Stormfist, which is a base game set. It comes from Tempest Island, so if you can't access Velidreth, then Stormfist, if you want to wear a full Monster Helm set, really is your only option. So Stormfist does have a little bit of additional cleave, so it does deal damage within 4 meters, but unlike Velidreth, if the boss moves out of that AoE, then it will not really do as much damage as it could potentially do. Velidreth will do all of its damage in one hit, so as long as the spore hits the boss, you will be doing all of your damage, but Stormfist, the boss needs to remain within that AoE to make the most use out of it. So that is the weakness of Stormfist compared to Velidreth. Now, the stamina regen from Stormfist is actually pretty useful overall, just because double bow builds do have a harder time sustaining than the dual wield bow build. But overall, if you are able to sustain the full rotation, then Velidreth is going to be stronger. Now, Nos, on his builds, does recommend running 2 different Monster Helm sets, each of them giving you weapon damage. So you want to go with one piece Velidreth and then any other Monster Helm set that provides additional weapon damage. Let me see if I can find which ones those are. I can't remember them off the top of my head. I believe it is, I know I know Balorg is one option, but Balorg does require you to have the Wolf Hunter DLC in order to get it. Molag Kina is another option, so that's White Gold Tower, so you do need to have access to the ICP, the Imperial City DLC in order to get Molag Kina, but I think those are the only two other Monster Helm sets that have weapon damage on there. One other option that you might want to consider doing is to run Krogs as your other one piece for additional physical penetration. Now, just to keep in mind here, Tzogvin's does have additional physical penetration. That's 1487 additional physical penetration. So that is just something you just want to keep in mind here. If you do use Krog and one-piece Velidreth, then that does allow you to run fewer points into piercing because now you have some additional physical penetration. So that is one option there. Nas has seen very good success running something like one-piece Krog and one-piece Velidreth, as well as one-piece Velidreth and one-piece Molag Kina. So those are a few options you have for Monster Helm sets. Now for your body set, we're still going with Relequen. Relequen is, despite the fact that we are going double bow, Relequen is still going to be the strongest set in the game right now for stamina DPS. So I have the perfect version here. This does drop from Vet Cloudrest, so you do need to have access to the Somerset expansion in order to grab this set. The perfected version of the set comes from Vet Cloudrest plus 1, 2, and 3. Armor comes from plus 1, weapons come from plus 0, and then your jewelry pieces come from plus 2 and plus 3. So if you don't have a group that can complete Vet Cloudrest, then you can get the non-perfect versions of this set from normal Cloudrest. The difference between the two of them is that max stamina bonus on that 5-piece, which really doesn't contribute all that much DPS. You're talking maybe 5 to 0.5% to 1%. Of your overall DPS from that additional max stamina bonus there. So this has to be a body set because you don't want to necessarily drop it if you are on your front bar here. But this is an expansion set, so you do need to have access to Somerset. So if you don't have access to Relequen, you do have a few other armor sets that you might want to consider running. So the first set is going to be Briarheart. This is a DLC set. This comes from Redguard, but it is a drop set, so if you don't have access to the Redguard DLC, you can buy pieces off of guild traders. This is a proc set, so whenever you deal critical damage, you have a chance to increase your weapon damage by, I believe the max amount is 45 for 10 seconds, and it also heals you during this effect is active whenever you do a critical hit. So it just gives you a little bit of additional heal, as well as some weapon damage. So it is a proc set, so if you want, you can wear this as the front bar set instead if you don't have access to Tzogvin's Warband, but you can also wear this as a body set as well. Another set you might want to consider running, which is going to be, generally speaking, going to be a little bit weaker. I don't think I have it out here. Is going to be Leviathan. Let me see if I can find it first. Here it is. Leviathan is a medium armor set from Crypt of Hearts, so it is a base game set, and it is basically the stamina version of Mother's Sorrow. So it just gives you a crap ton of weapon crit. So because the 5-piece is a static bonus, you do want to have this on your body in order for maximum effect. You could wear this as a front bar, but because it's a static bonus, you will lose it while you're on your back bar, so you don't necessarily want to lose that weapon crit while you're on your back bar. So Leviathan will be a body set here. Another set, which is a crafted set. I don't want to open Alpha Gear. The crafted set is going to be Hunding's Rage. Let me see if I can find it. Here it is, Hunding's Rage. So this is a base game crafted set. You do need to know 6 traits in whatever piece you want to craft if you want to run this set. Alternatively, you can get somebody to craft it for you, usually for a small fee, crafter's fee, or as long as you provide the materials, they might do it for free. Or you can buy this off of guild traders. So similarly to Leviathan, that 5-piece bonus, the 299 weapon damage, is a static bonus, so you do want to wear Hunding's Rage as your body set, not as a front bar set, so that way you don't lose that weapon damage when you go to your back bar. Those are probably going to be your strongest options for your body set overall. There is one other set that you could wear if you don't have anything else, and that's going to be, not twice, where is it? Vicious Serpent, so otherwise known as Vicious Ophidian. So this set is a base game set from any of the 3 Craglorn trials. This is a medium armor set, so you can just wear it on your body. And the 5-piece reduces the cost of your stamina abilities by 8%. It provides 129 weapon damage. When you kill an enemy, you gain some additional stamina and major expedition. So this basically just gives you a little bit of additional sustain. The 5-piece, outside of that 129 weapon damage, doesn't really provide all too much, but it does allow you to maintain that minor slayer through that 3-piece. So Vicious Ophidian is another option for a body set if you want to go ahead and farm that from the Craglorn. So this is a medium armor set, so you can farm this on normal Craglorn if you're just intending on using it as a body set on your armor. Those are your primary options here for the body set. So for your front bar set, we're going with Tzogvin. So this is a new set that comes from Frostvault, the Tzogvin's Warband. This is a medium armor set here, and we are going to be using this on our front bar. So this is a pretty nice set. So it gives you two armor bonuses of weapon crit. It gives you 1487 physical pen as the 4-piece, and then the 5-piece, when you deal critical damage, you gain a stack of precision, increasing your weapon crit by 129 for 10 seconds, up to 10 stacks maximum. When you get max stacks, you also gain minor force, increasing your critical damage done by 10%. So because it procs off of any critical damage, doesn't matter if it's a dot or a direct damage hit, it's actually pretty easy to get all 10 stacks fairly quickly. It also gives you weapon crit, so at max stacks it gives you 1290 additional weapon crit, which is about 150% of a 1 armor piece. So if 833 to 1290, that's just a little bit more than 50% increase to that 833. So it does give you a nice bonus to your weapon crit. And the minor force is just additional icing on the cake here. So that basically allows us to no longer have to run lightweight speed trap or channel acceleration anymore, nor to gain a minor force. We just need to just maintain our precision, which is pretty easy because the proc condition is just critical damage and it lasts for 10 seconds. So that's a very long time for it to last. So this is definitely the new set to go for bow build. So this is going to be our front bar set here. So you do want to have this on the bow bar. And again, if you don't have access to the Wrathstone DLC, then instead of Tzogvin, you can run Briarheart instead. Briarheart is going to be the best option for your front bar set if you don't have access to Tzogvins. And for our back bar, as you can expect, the Maelstrom Bow infused with a weapon damage enchant. For our front bar, we are going with sharpened with a poison weapon. Alchemical poison, not poison weapon. So this is a alchemical poison that you can craft on any alchemy station. You can craft that using Fleshfly Larva, Nern Root, or Violet Caprinus and Nightshade. So this, now that they have fixed the bug with damage health poisons, they do now stack on top of each other, so multiple people can be using this poison at the same time. This is going to be the best option here. We are going with sharpened instead of infused, just because if we're using alchemical poisons, infused doesn't boost that at all, so we're better off using something like sharpened or precise in order to boost our DPS. I'm going with sharpened here. That allows me to put fewer points into piercing, allows me to invest a little bit more into the other CP nodes, because we are going to be running the shadow as our primary Mundus. For jewelry traits and enchants, we have 3 Bloodthirsty and 3 weapon damage enchants. You can also go with Infused on your jewelry traits if you would like, but Bloodthirsty is going to give you the best overall DPS in general. There are going to be a handful of fights where Infused is going to be more important, just because the execute phase is either going to be very short, or you don't really need the additional damage in execute. You're going more for burst damage, in which case Infused is going to be stronger. Then for armor, we are going with all mediums, so 7 medium pieces, all divines, all max stamina. Alright, moving on to our character sheet. I am an orc. Orcs are going to be the best race overall for stamina DPS. They get 2000 max stam, they also get 1000 max health, and they get 258 weapon damage. So pretty strong overall. You get a little bit of additional beefiness through that 1000 max health. The next best racial option is going to be the Dark Elves. They get 1875 max stamina and 258 weapon damage, so a little bit less stamina than Orcs, so they are just a hair weaker than Orcs overall. But Dark Elves do also get 1875 max magicka and 258 spell damage, so if you ever want to become a magicka Nightblade, then you can make that swap pretty easily if you are a Dark Elf. Other potential race options are going to be the Khajiits. They get 825 magicka stamina and health. They get 85 magicka and stamina regen and 100 health regen, and they get 10% additional critical damage done. It's going to be weaker than the 258 weapon damage that Orcs and Dark Elves get, but it's still a nice bonus to your overall DPS. The 2 final races that you might want to consider running are going to be Redguards and the Wood Elves / Bosmer. So both of these races get 2000 max magicka. The Wood Elves get 258 additional stamina regen, so they get a really nice boost to their sustain. Redguards are also a sustain class, sustain race, just like they were in Murkmire, where they get 950 stamina with direct damage every 5 seconds. So those 2 races, even though they do get 2000 max stamina, they don't get any additional sort of weapon, or I should say damage passives. They do get sustain passives instead, so it's easier to sustain on a Wood Elf or Redguard compared to an Orc or a Dark Elf, neither of which get any sort of sustain bonus. For our attribute points, we have 64 points into stamina. We want to maximize our DPS, so we just put all of our points into stamina, and we are an orc, so we do get 1,000 additional max health, which is effectively about 8 additional points into health, a little bit 7 to 8 points into health here, so pretty nice overall. So if you're an orc, you don't really need to put any points into health. Now, if you do want to get a little bit more survivability, you can shift a few points in health if you so desire. I personally would not recommend putting more than 10 points into health, just because at that point, you're giving up a little bit too much in terms of raw damage. Now for our Mundus stone, we are going with the Shadow. The Shadow did get a buff in Wrathstone, so on Murkmire it was 9% base. In Wrathstone it is now 13% base, which gives us 90% additional crit damage with all Divines pieces. So a very strong Mundus stone. Now you can also run, if you so desire, you can also run the Lover instead for the additional penetration. If you are going to be running the Lover instead of the Shadow, then you obviously don't want to run Sharpened as your front bar, so in that case you'll be running Precise instead. But those are your two primary Mundus options. Finally, for the purposes of our parse, we are running Lava Foot. So this basically simulates getting orbs on cooldown, as well as just a little bit worse than Blue Food. We get a little bit less max stamina compared to Blue Food. In an actual raid, you'll be using either Dubious Camoran Throne or Arteaum Takeaway Broth. That gives you max health, max stamina, as well as stamina regen. So like I mentioned a little bit earlier, bow builds do have a little bit worse sustain compared to your dual wield bow build, just because some of your abilities do cost a little bit more in order to use. So you do want to run Dubious Camoran Throne or Arteaum Takeaway Broth for the additional stamina regen that those two foods provide for you. Now moving on to our skills, we have Acid Spray, Lethal Arrow, Piercing Mark. This is only here for the parse, so we were using Piercing Mark to give us the Major Fracture bonus. If you, obviously Major Fracture is provided through your tank using Pierced Armor, and I'll go over what ability I would normally put here, so I have two other abilities that I would normally put here instead of Piercing Mark, depending on the situation. Relentless Focus, Silver Leash, Incapacitating Strike. This is here for the additional crit chance. We're not really going to be using it. We're assuming that we're playing completely at range here. We're not within melee range, because if we're in melee range, we're just going to go with the dual wield bow build instead. Silver Leash is only for the 3% additional weapon damage that we get from the Fighter's Guild passive Slayer. Then for our back bar, we have Razor Caltrops, Poison Injection, Lethal Air, Endless Hail, Leeching Strikes. We have Relentless Focus doubled again. This is here not just for the, it's mainly here for the Assassination passive, the Hemorrhage passive, so we can maintain our additional critical damage, the 10% additional critical damage. But if we happen to be caught on our back bar and we get our bow proc, then we don't have to swap to our back bar to get to kind of use it. So that's another reason why you might want to consider running Relentless Focus on the back bar. And then for our ultimate, we're running Ballista. This is going to be our primary damage ultimate here. Okay, so instead of Piercing Mark, so again, I am using Piercing Mark for the purpose of the parse, so we can get Major Fracture, so we can get a more comparable parse to other stamina DPS, particularly dual wield bow builds, as well as the Warden bow build, because it does also use Subterranean Assault. But if you're not using Piercing Mark, you can either go with one of two abilities. So the first ability is going to be any Fighter's Guild ability for the additional weapon damage while you're on your front bar. You get 3% weapon damage if you replace this with any Fighter's Guild ability. The other ability, which is going to be situationally useful, is going to be Shadow Silk. So if you guys have seen a lot of the bow build parse videos that have been done in Wrathstone, you'll notice that in their combat metrics report, Shadow Silk, the Black Widow synergy, is doing a lot of DPS. So if you are running with other bow builds, you can run Shadow Silk to give your other bow friend an additional synergy to help improve their DPS. The synergy does scale off of your weapon damage, your weapon as well as your physical penetration. So you shouldn't really be using this if there is no other bow build, just because magical DPS aren't really going to be seeing very good use out of this, because it does scale with physical penetration. This is a nice skill to have on hand if you have another bow build in the group. That way you guys can sort of trade off your Shadow Silk synergies for some even more DPS. But for the parse, we are going to be using Piercing Mark just to get that Major Fracture. Now going over our champion points, the CP cap has not changed between Murkmire and Wrathstone. So their CP cap is still 810, which gives us 270 points to put across each of our 3 different constellation colors. Starting off with our green CPs, we have 75 in the Mooncalf and 75 in Tenacity, which gives us 120 points to put into the remaining nodes, really however we'd like. I have 40 Shadow Ward, 40 Tumbling, and 40 Warlord. If you want, you can push Mooncalf and Tenacity all the way up to 100 to get that last 1 percentage point, in which case you would have 70 points instead of 120 points to use. Now for our blue CPs, I do actually need to take a few more points out of piercing here because I was playing around with Briarheart front bar here, so I do need to make a quick adjustment here. We're going to go 28 into piercing, and then we'll bring Thaumaturge up to 56, Precise Strikes up to 61. Actually, we're going to have to put piercing up to 31 in order to make best use out of our points here. But if we're using Tzogvin's front bar, you'd be running 31 piercing, 56 mighty, 61 precise strikes, 56 thaumaturge, and 66 into master arms. If you are running Briarheart instead, you'd be using the configuration that I had earlier, which was, if I remember correctly, I believe I still need to bring this down. It would be 44 piercing, 56 mighty, 52 precise strikes, 52 thaumaturge, and 66 mastered arms if you're using Briarheart, or if you're using Briarheart without Krogs. Now, if you are running Krogs, you do have a couple of you do need to take more points out of piercing because you have additional physical penetration from Krogs. So if you have Tzogvins and Krogs, you can also drop piercing down by another about 1400. You'd be able to drop this down to about 15, and you can bump mighty up to 64, and you can bump thaumaturge up to 61, and you would have 3 points left over, so bump piercing back up to 18 here. So if you have Krogs and Tzogvins, you run 64 mighty, 18 piercing, 61 precise strikes, thaumaturge, and 66 into master at arms. Now finally, for our red CPs, so this is a one-size-fits-most approach, so this will give you very good mitigation across every single piece of content in the game that you might want to clear. But if you want to maximize your mitigation across any single piece of content, then you will need to shift some red CP points around depending on the content that you are running. I have 81 Ironclad, 61 Thick-Skinned, and 64 into both Hardy and Elemental Defender. Alright, that is it for all the build information. Let's go ahead and talk about our rotation, because I did mention that our rotation is going to be a little bit different than the dual-wield bow build. Now, because we are not using Advanced Yokeda on our front bar, we don't have to worry about staying on our back bar for too long. Tzogvins last for 10 seconds, so we have a lot of time to spend on our back bar if we decide to do so. So don't feel like you need to rush through your back bar anymore, because we don't have to worry about the 5-second duration on Advanced Yokeda. You have 10 seconds to do your entire back bar rotation. But obviously you're going to want to start off first with your buffs, so that's obviously Leeching and Relentless. You just want to start off your rotation here. Now you just want to basically use Lethal Arrow as your spamble. And that's pretty much the whole rotation. So your Lethal Arrows can be your main spamble, and again, you don't have to worry about taking too long on your back bar. And again, we do have our bow proc double barred, so if you happen to get it while you're on your back bar, you can just use that right away. That's basically the whole idea of the rotation. So just remember that as soon as you hit 4 on your Relentless focus, right when you do your light attack, you just want to do, let me just do the demonstration, 1, 2, 3, 4. You're going to want to do light attack bow proc. So you don't want to do 1, 2, 3, 4. You don't want to do an ability and then do your bow proc, because then you basically wasted a light attack that way. So make sure it's 1, 2, 3, 4, light attack bow proc right away. So just want to make sure you do that with your bow proc there. Now if you are running your Shadow Silk synergy instead, you just want to use that every time you're on your front bar here. So I'll show you a quick demonstration of that as soon as I'm out of combat and I can swap skills. So if you are using Shadow Silk, so it does last for 5 seconds, so you will need to likely use it twice while you're on your front bar here. But do keep in mind that Shadow Silk is fairly expensive, so you might not necessarily want to run it every 5 seconds. In addition, the synergy will only activate every 20 seconds, so you don't really need to run it every 5 seconds. You don't even need to run it every 10 seconds. You could just run it every 20 seconds instead, which would be every 2 times you're on your front bar. So you do basically Shadow Silk, you throw that down at the start of your rotation, you do your back rotation, you do your front bar rotation, and then when you are out of your back bar rotation, you open up again with Shadow Silk right on your front bar. So you basically go through 2 back bar rotations before you re-up Shadow Silk. That way, because really the point of Shadow Silk is not for the damage that it does yourself, it's more for the synergy that you provide to your other bow friends. So that's really the reason why you're running Shadow Silk. It's not really for your personal DPS. You don't really need to cast it on cooldown. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So again, we're not using in-cap because we're not in melee range. We're not using Silver Leech. This is just for the weapon damage bonus. Now for Ballista, you can either use Ballista before your bar swap, or you can use Ballista, then Poison Injection, and go out of your bar swap that way. It's up to you which ability you want to use last. Now the last thing I want to mention here is because we are using a bow build, bow does have a passive here that increases the damage we deal with our bow abilities the farther away we are. That's long shot. So we want to be as far away as we possibly can from our dummy in order to maximize our damage. Now the furthest skill that we have is going to be 20 meters away, so that's Acid Spray. Lethal Arrow has a longer range, and this bow proc also has a longer range, so the shortest range ability is Acid Spray, which is 20 meters. So we are going to be doing our powers on our 6 million dummy, but I did want to show you guys kind of how far 20 meters is from a visual distance, so you guys can get an idea of how far away you should ideally be standing from the boss. You can see here at this point we are still able to hit our dummy, and here's Velidreth proc, so you guys can see that Velidreth is still able to hit the dummy there. But if we back up even more, you see that we are not able to hit him. So right where my jewelry crafting station is, if I try to hit our dummy, you can see I'm not hitting the dummy. But if I take a few steps forward, we're able to hit our dummy. So this is about 20 meters or so. This is about as far away as you want to make it. And as you can see here, Velidreth does make it all the way out there with 20 meters at 20 meters. So this will give you sort of a visual line, so to speak, as to how far away you need to be from the boss. To give you an idea, blockade is 18 meters away, so if you're used to playing magic DPS and you know and you can kind of eyeball your distance for blockade, then that's a little bit farther than that, is about as far as you want to stand on a double bow build. I'm just going to reset the dummy so it is at full health, and then we'll go ahead and get started with our 6 million dummy parse. So we are using weapon damage potions here for the major brutality, major savagery, and the additional stamina regen. So do keep in mind, just keep an eye on our stamina. Again, bow builds do have a little bit worse sustain compared to dual wield bow builds. So I personally like to use Ballista before my poison injection, but again, you can do the other way around if you'd like. So again, we don't have to really worry about how long we're spending on our back bar because Tzogvin's does last for 10 seconds. So you can see here I took quite a long time on the back bar here. And do note that this is going to be a little bit lower DPS because we are using a global cooldown to maintain our major fracture. So we would be doing a little bit more DPS because instead of using a lethal arrow, we are using our mark instead for the major fracture. As you can see here, I have absolutely no qualms at all about staying on my back bar for a little bit longer. Just because Tzogvin's last for such a long time compared to Advanced Arcada. So we are not in range for Killer's Blade, and obviously Impale would not scale very nicely because we are basically a stamina DPS. so we don't have an execute, unlike the dual wield bow build, which sort of reduces our overall damage potential. Alright, so there we go. That is our double bow parse. So here is the amount of DPS we were able to pull. We managed to pull 53.3k. So if you want to compare that to a dual wield bow build, you can go right ahead and do that. So you can see here that double bow build's got an incredibly massive buff in Wrathstone. The combination of proper scaling with the Black Widow synergy combined with the introduction of Tzogvins is just fantastic. And the buff to Shadow also helped out a lot as well. So Lethal Arrow is a very strong ability here. You can see here that our max crit was 48.7k, stronger than our bow, which crit for 47.2k. We did get a little bit of additional crit RNG here, so you can see here that we got 86% of our Lethal Arrows crit, 76% of our Assassin's Scourge crit, which was about our mean. Our mean was 76.3, but we got a little bit lucky with RNG, crit RNG with Lethal Arrow, as well as Ballista, so we got 81% Ballista, so that might be why our parse was a little bit higher than what I normally would expect to pull. I would normally expect to pull around 51k or so, 52k, but this is definitely kind of shows you that double bow builds are definitely up there when it comes to DPS, and they are very competitive with Magicka DPS builds for that ranged spot. And if you think about if we had somebody else providing our Black Widow synergy, this parse would be even higher because of that additional synergy there. So very, very powerful build overall, much more powerful in Wrathstone than it was in previous patches. So if you guys want to play a stamina DPS but still want to play at range, a double bow build is definitely a possibility for you. So that is it for this build video. If you guys have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them down in the comment section below. I will also provide a link to a raid parse of Nas. I believe it is a 91k Manticore fight parse, so you guys can take a look at how bow build actually performs in an actual raid. Hope you guys found this video informative, and I will see you guys in the next dungeon.